All right, so in the last video, what I did was we went through all 5 of the documents. We put the main idea down for each, so that way we can quickly reference back and forth. We actually did a PHIA for each one. Remember, we only need to do 2 technically, but this is going to be helpful for us because, some might be better than others. We might be able to work in a little bit easier. Remember, to get the point for each of these, it's not good enough to just say that we acknowledge it. But what we do need to do is we do need to spend some time and we need to connect it to the major argument. So maybe based on what my argument is going to be, I'll be able to do this a little bit better. I now move into the outside evidence. And for this right now, what I really just want to do is put down a lot of general outside evidence because I don't know, like I said, my argument quite yet. I don't know my document grouping. So if I only put down a couple pieces of outside evidence, it might not really work with my groupings on the documents. But if I put down quite a little bit, that means when I come up with my groupings and I do my stuff, I'm going to be able to really come up with something nice here that's going to be able to work out. So I put down the Sherman Antitrust Act because I remember that was an early antitrust act. That was really our earliest one, but it was so flawed that it didn't really do a lot of stuff for actually shutting down monopolies and trusts. So this would be definitely something that I might consider looking into and talking about a little bit more. I also know that workers had a real tough time in this early period. And I remember that because even up to 1910, there was some progressive reform under, Teddy, but not a ton. And, again, if we're thinking 1870 to 1910, most of that would be not a lot of good progressive reform. So I'm going to say, and I really didn't see that, by the way, in the documents. Not a lot of talk about good progressive reform. We saw some muckrakers and stuff, but we didn't really see that. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to remind myself, they had long hours, they had low pay, they had bad working conditions, those type of things there. So all being no good. I also know that, and again, there was some talk in document 4 about the monopolies, and I put here that they use some vicious practices in order to monopolize. And I remember some of those included horizontal and vertical integration. And I remember that, they use these tactics in order to vertical, not as bad. You just, take over the means of production. But horizontal is really establishing kind of this general monopoly and where you kind of dominate and take over all the companies in your specific sphere. So that's obviously no good. So that's something that I do want to bring up here and I think is worthy of my time and might be valuable outside evidence. And so that's good stuff. Going back to kind of my workers, I also remember, and this is something that's kind of brought up, and it's made me think of something. Again, hopefully that's what the documents are doing. They're reminding you. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this. Again, use them for that. Use them for those hints. Another thing I want to remind you here is about our kind of rise of labor unions. But if we remember, they weren't that good, trouble really during this period in unifying, I would say. And they really didn't do a good job of kind of setting that precedent together. And I kind of think, why did labor unions kind of struggle? And I remember something, which is that there was a big divide between skilled and unskilled workers. So that's problematic. I also remember that one of those reasons for those divide had to do with the rise in immigration, many of our immigrants being unskilled workers. So this is a problem here as well that I also want to address. So this is problematic, and this is something that we're looking at here, which is also basically a divide between, hate to say the word native, but somewhat, workers and immigrant workers. So this is something else that I kind of recall here. I also mentioned some stuff about progressive reform. I don't see a lot of mention of progressive reform in the documents, but maybe I want to kind of bring this up as kind of a counter argument, or maybe something where I talk about the context a little bit later on and saying that a lot of these things did get better, but from the period, 1870, 1910, we didn't see a whole lot of that. So that's obviously an issue and that's a problem. Okay, so now I can move into my document groupings. And so now I need to think to myself, okay, I have these 5 documents. They're all saying something a little bit different, but can I see commonalities among them? Reminding myself that we're talking about social change. So we're talking about change occurring with people. And so if I look at document 1, I remember, okay, saying the rich are treating the workers badly for their own wealth, but also that the poor are almost kind of like brainwashed. They're desiring their riches. They are not unified as workers against the rich. So okay, that's a problem. Okay, so look at document 2. We see that the rich, because they have so much power, they're able to make the price of goods extremely high. They prevent consumption, so that with prices being too cheap, because they have such a hold on the amount of goods. So that's a problem. Surplus wealth for the betterment of mankind. Okay, so this is Carnegie talking about this. This kind of sees the rich in a more positive light, but it also does acknowledge that the rich are extremely rich. So we go to document 4 here. Okay, Standard Oil, again, this huge monopoly, not necessarily playing by the rules and leading to kind of a situation where they've been able to build wealth in becoming this kind of ultimate super trust company. Okay, and then difference in class and workers that I saw in document 5. So these are talking about people at the end of the day. And even Standard Oil is talking about a company, but that's talking about Rockefeller, the head of Standard Oil, who's the richest man in American history. So if I think about this, I think to myself, if I really think about how this is divided, at least this is what I'm seeing. Again, you can see it in a different way. There's no set right or wrong. It just needs to kind of make sense. I think if I'm going to do my 2 body paragraphs, I'm going to make one about the experiences of change for the rich, and then I'm going to make one for the experiences of the working or the poor. And I think that's really where this is going here, and I think this is going to help me be effective. So if I look at these documents and I start with the rich, I'm going to say document 2, definitely looking at kind of the ill practices of the rich. Document 3, absolutely. Again, it's from Carnegie, but it's more positive about what the rich should do, but it is painting light on the fact that most rich did not do this, and also that they had extreme wealth. Then I go document 4. Again, this is looking at Standard Oil, so absolutely. So 2, 3, and 4. And remember, we're trying to use all 5, even though we only have to use 4, but we have good grasp here. And so my major theme that I want to use here is I want to say, experiences of the rich due to industrial capitalism. Okay, so that's where I'm going here. And then if I do my topic sentence, and again, I can tweak it here, but I'm going to say between 1870 and 1910, social change was immense for the wealthy in the United States, leading to extreme wealth and a new class of rich. And if you remember, the new class of rich was because they worked for their money and they were not born into it. So this is something that I want to kind of keep in mind and keep in mind. So again, I might tweak this topic sentence a little bit later, but it's a decent foundation for now. It does look at this one group in particular, and I think that will suffice for this point in time. Okay, my next one then would be the remaining documents, documents 1 and 5, and these are the change for working class / poor. And then topic sentence here, I'm going to say along the lines, I'll take a similar type of kind of format here between 1870 and 1910. More Americans became industrial workers and initially struggled with low wages and poor conditions, and I'm going to say manipulation by the rich, because I was kind of feeling that as I went through the documents, those themes. So again, I might change it a little bit. Again, that's totally okay. Not everything has to be totally set here, but this is just something to keep in mind here. Contextualization, what's going on at the time. 1870, we're post-Civil War, so that's something to keep in mind. Country is unified, at least sort of, but that allows them to kind of look within. huge industrial growth that happens. One of our biggest things whenever we talk about industrialism is the growth of the railroad. We see the transcontinental railroad at this point. So that would be something good to come into light here. So this is more workers. And then one of the big things that we see from this period is a move from countryside / the rural parts of the country. Okay, that's great. And then, well, kind of connected to this point, a move to the cities, factories, workers, that's all good stuff there. And then maybe at the end of this, and this would really show good complex understanding possibly, definitely could be part of contextualization as well, is that by the early 20th century, we're going to see substantial progressive reform. And we're going to see changes. So maybe I want to include that in like the conclusion. Maybe talk about that a little bit more. For workers, better balance of wealth inequality. But at this point in time, that's not really what we're seeing, and that's not really what the documents are talking about. So the last thing I'll wrap up then is with the thesis. And to be honest, sometimes thesis is tough, but because we've gone over these documents so well, and because I have these like decent topic sentences, I think I can come up with something that's relatively good. And I think what I'm going to write here is something along the lines of this. And again, maybe I can tweak it, but I'm going to say, although, sorry, maybe I should actually bold it. Although industrialism would eventually lead to progressive reform, the period of 1870 to 1910 saw huge wealth inequality as a new rich class emerged with new wealth and opportunities as the lower class struggled with low wages, working conditions, and an inability to effectively organize. Ugh. Okay, so again, I might change this a little bit, but at the same time, if I look at this thesis, it's answering the question, it's specific, it's kind of presenting a counter argument, it shows relatively good understanding of the time period, and I think this is going to help me kind of put something together. And again, if I look here at what I've done here, I have huge wealth inequality for the new rich class that emerges with new wealth and opportunities. Well, that's my first paragraph right there. So that's going to perfectly lead into my first body paragraph. And then my lower class struggling with low wages, working conditions, and an inability to effectively organize. That's going to be my second body paragraph. It's right there. It's already done. So already the reader knows where I'm going here, and they're going to see if I'm going to be able to support myself. So again, it takes a little bit of time to put this stuff together. It's not going to take you as long as I just did because I'm narrating it and kind of, going all over the place in order to show you the differences and kind of different angles you can go or whatever else. But I hope you look at this, and I hope you, this helps you kind of visualize. And again, you don't have to go this way with rich versus poor. It's just when I went through the documents, that's what I saw. That's what I was able to do here. And then now that I have this, I can go back to kind of my outside evidence, and I can see, okay, what's going to fit most effectively in these places. And I think I'll probably talk about vertical and horizontal integration for my rich, and I'll talk about maybe Sherman antitrust. Maybe I'll throw that in there too, because that's a good one to show the manipulation. And then I think for my poor, I'm going to talk really about the inability of the immigrants to kind of become part of the worker movement as a whole, and unacceptance by kind of our native workers with the immigrant community and things like that. And so I think if I come up with all this kind of stuff, it's going to help me really come up with something nice, and this outside evidence is going to work well and incorporate itself relatively well here as well. So hopefully this was good. Again, I'll give you another one of these things, and again, hopefully you seeing my thought process and what I was able to come up with was helpful for you. So thanks. Let me know any questions you may have.